when I think about the sustainability trends of today, and frankly of the last few years, I'm really inspired by the fact that the C-suite is becoming more and more a part of the leadership for sustainability. Nonprofit and private partnerships are growing in impact, significant impact, and innovation continues to drive sustainability across the world. But one trend is quite sobering, and that is, according to the World Economic Forum's Global Threats Report, 4 of the 10 risks that are facing companies around the world right now, in fact, have to do with climate change. So those risks are water insecurity, food insecurity, climate adaptation and mitigation failures, and extreme weather events. And those risks are paired with very important risks around economic insecurity, fiscal insecurity, and unemployment, and national security threats. But when we think about these threats, we understand that there are also potential opportunities. And that's where I think the corporate sector has so much important value to play. Because risk turned into opportunity around these vulnerable sectors that are impacted by climate change, such as coastal infrastructure, energy infrastructure, food and ag, and water, are in fact the place where our next era for sustainability is going to grow and really thrive. When I think about these issues, I often take it into a very personal place. So I cut my teeth professionally in Vietnam and the Philippines, where I worked with doctors in Bac Bai Hospital that saw patients from around the country who traveled many days to be served by the physicians in Hanoi, Vietnam. I also went to Hue, the imperial city, where there are brass urns, 2 tons, weighing 2 tons, that celebrate the incredible prosperity and fecundity of the region from the 18th century. So they're celebrating their amazing deltas and their fields and their rivers and their oceans. And these incredible resources draw lots of tourists today. I also worked in the Philippines, where children went to school and enjoyed very healthy and wonderful days in Manila. And in Tacloban, the Philippines, they greeted visitors with big smiles on their faces. Now, you might be thinking, okay, I presume she's going to now shift to a story of doom and gloom, and in fact, a lot has changed. All of us are much older and wiser, and in the Philippines, the children in Tacloban no longer have any built infrastructure after Hurricane Haiyan. The children in Manila don't go to school as frequently because they suffer from many more incidences of waterborne disease due to lack of water infrastructure. And in Bac Mai Hospital, there are many fewer days that they can serve patients with full electricity due to drought-driven hydropower failures. And in Hue, fewer visitors come due to the fact that there is very frequent flooding, shuttering businesses, and preventing individuals from seeing the incredible prosperity that remains even after hundreds of years of war and extreme weather events. And in fact, these risks are magnified around the world. The US military calls climate risk a threat multiplier and suggests that Chad, Darfur, and Syria conflicts may in fact be driven by climate-related impacts. And recently, the World Bank produced a report that suggested that many of the gains we've made in poverty reduction and shoring up human prosperity are in fact going backwards due to climate impacts. The Notre Dame Global Adaptation Index showed that many of the lower income countries are in fact much less resilient and not gaining on OECD countries. So it will take more than 100 years for lower income countries to reach the resiliency of the higher income or OECD countries, according to our data. But when we think about what this means for corporations, we realize that there are many, many opportunities to see prosperity in the global questions of water, food, and in engineering. So for instance, PepsiCo is innovating around an eye crop technology along with Columbia University. More crop per drop around the world in order to free up resources to increase their market share and increase food security around the world. Monsanto is working with partners through the Water Efficient Maize Initiative with the African Technology Association, the World Bank, and the Gates Foundation in Africa to ensure that there are, in fact, fields that are fecund even in a drought-stricken environment. And for infrastructure, AECOM and CH2M Hill are working with cities to shore up infrastructure, ensuring that coastal and transportation infrastructure is in fact resilient to the changes that are coming. Around water, Ecolab is collaborating with their clients in the industrial sector to really maximize water use efficiency, anticipating decreases in watershed availability. And Ushahati and other small companies are working to figure out how best to put people back together, communities back together after extreme events. So all of these examples show you that, in fact, there are many, many ways for the corporate sector to be involved in resiliency and growing climate adaptation as part of their business opportunity. But you might ask yourself, how can I be a part of that future? What tools can I find to better understand what risks I have in my supply chain, what corporate assets are at risk, and what community engagements I need to further in this climate-changed world? There are many tools out there, and one, the Notre Dame Global Adaptation Index, is the world's leading index showing which countries are best prepared to deal with climate risk. We rank 177 countries according to 50 variables, both vulnerability, that is water, coastal infrastructure, energy, food, as well as readiness. Are these countries, in fact, ready to accept adaptation investments? And it's probably no surprise that Europe, the United States, and others come to the top in this ranking, which is a ranking of 17 years of data. But there are, in fact, some surprises. So, for instance, South Korea has grown up the index over 10 points in the course of the last decade, and that's no surprise. It's due in no small part to corporate investments that have really shorn up their infrastructure, as well as ensured that they have food security and that their health impacts are improving over time. Rwanda is another big surprise. They've moved up the index 45 points over the course of the last 15 years. And that's really significantly due to the fact that their political and governance stability has enhanced over time. One of the tools that ND GAIN provides corporations is to better understand their relative vulnerability and readiness, so that you, as a decision maker, could plot all of the countries in which you have your supply chains against this grid. And those countries that are, in fact, in the more vulnerable but less ready sphere might be countries that you should be doubly worried about in terms of your business continuity planning. But those countries that are highly vulnerable and more ready, on the right-hand side there, are, in fact, areas for extreme investment. So those are the opportunities that all of us should see as we think about a more resilient world and how we can be part of adapting. So when I think about the questions of climate risk in the future, I'm really struck by one very important thing, and that is, while many of us in the mitigation arena think about climate as it relates to a metric ton of greenhouse gas emissions, the questions of climate risk relate to people. The measure of climate adaptation success has everything to do with our communities, our families, our customers, and our employees. And so it's up to us to think about the collateral benefits that we can see for these communities in not only mitigating greenhouse gas emissions, but seeing resiliency as a way to buttress our food security, ensure our water supply, enhance our economic prosperity, and decrease civil conflicts. So I encourage all of you to think carefully about your supply chains, your capital assets, and your community engagements, and ask yourself the climate question so that you too can be part of creating a resilient future for the world while also improving your bottom line. Thank you so much.